Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. With that kind of introduction, I feel like I have a high bar to meet, and so I intend to do that with you and make this interactive. And I'm going to try to make this mostly, well, I'll jump back and forth between slides and seeing my face. So you might want to see this in speaker view. That's going to make it easier for you. You might be wondering what someone who has been a lawyer and runs a company called Rainmaking for Lawyers can tell you. And so let me assure you, almost nothing that I'm going to say actually deals with lawyers. This is really for people like yourselves who, for the most part, advise businesses or business owners. You heard from your, people who are looking. This applies also for people who are looking to change careers, job interviews, your future next couple of speakers in terms of sales and career strategy. This is really to figure out how to get your message to spread and be memorable in a way that's not artificial, that's educational, and that is specific to business audiences. One of the mistakes that people make when they are thinking about a networking event and they're thinking about an elevator speech is they get into elevator speech mode. And you can see they all get ready and they're prepared and they're memorized, and it falls flat. And here's why. The whole premise of an elevator pitch applies to a world that pretty much doesn't exist very much anymore. How often in a world with Google, with LinkedIn, with screenshots, with email, do you run into someone, and if you don't convey something to them, by the time they get off the elevator, you have zero chance of ever connecting with them again? That didn't happen pre-COVID much, and it certainly almost never happens today. Now, does that mean that first impressions don't matter? They do. Does that mean that it doesn't at all matter what you say? It clearly does. It's just that people, when they've gotten into this I am in elevator speech mode, have lost sight of, through no fault of their own, what in my experience advising people and really working almost exclusively in the B2B space for close to 30 years as an advocate, talking to business owners, talking to executives at middle market companies, at large corporations, at startups, that there is something specific about this world. There's something specific about communicating in this world. And so this is basically to give you some examples and some tidbits so that when we get to the top of the hour, right around 7 o'clock, we will divide into a breakout room. You'll have 15 minutes and be broken down into groups of 4 so you can practice, you can try some of the stuff that I'm going to suggest to you, because part of it is giving yourself permission to get out of your comfort zone. And so there's going to be lots of specific suggestions. So if you don't think one specific suggestion or idea applies to you, wait a couple of minutes. This is really to be a catalyst to spur new ideas so that you can try on some ideas yourself and take some chances and maybe do something in a setting like this, or convey what you do and describe yourself in a way that normally you might not. And so one of the principles is that we're looking at here was captured in sort of, in a conversation or series conversations that I had a few years ago with an investment manager who approached me. At the time, she was doing quite well. She had a AUM, assets under management, of probably 40 or $50 million, but she felt that in the prior 2 years, what had happened is that she got stuck. She was sort of hit a plateau. And a lot of the specific pieces of advice or the concepts that we're going to review and have you practice and experiment with come from the series of conversations that over time I did end up working with her and advising her. And it sort of led to her growing her AUM by about like $5 to $7 million over the course of about a year and a half. And again, nothing about this is guaranteed. I'm not here to really sell you anything. It's just to, maybe I'm going to be a nudge and make you think about things that are a little different than what you normally might do when you describe what you do, especially in networking events, to sort of get beyond that elevator speech mode that a lot of us get into. So here's the agenda, a couple of basic concepts. We're going to talk about strategy and positioning first for a few minutes. We're then going to talk about what are the elements of an effective message, what works and what doesn't in today's world. And this is not basic stuff. I've actually looked at some of your websites, and no one here has gotten to the level where they are, where you are, whether it's insurance, whether it's sales, there's IT people, financial advisors, career coaches, 401k advisors. Everybody got here because they have education, they have a certain level of certification, they have a certain amount of experience. So this is not about the basic information. This is about giving you tips and suggestions to go kind of the level beyond that. So we're going to talk about this positioning, we're going to talk about messaging, and then we're going to, at 7 o'clock, give or take a couple of minutes, don't hold me exactly to 7, but within a few minutes of that in either direction, we're going to give you an opportunity for 15 to 20 minutes to try some things out in groups of 4. So with that, let's jump right to it. What do I mean by effective positioning? It's this concept. Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, what's really increasingly clear in a world that's always been dynamic and is even becoming more dynamic, especially the B2B world, when you are talking to business owners, it's very different when you're selling directly to consumers. This is not like, oh, let's go get a celebrity endorsement. Let's go get a YouTube influencer, and that's how we're going to raise our profile. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't work for 401k consulting, right? That's not, that's not the right approach. So you have to think about how to cast a net. Where are my best clients? Where are my best potential referral sources? And you're not probably casting one net. You might be saying, I have this element, I do stuff for business owners and family-owned businesses. I have a connection to a university, so part of my connection is there. It could be through a church. It could be something in your background. It could be you have different sub-markets for target audiences. But you have this concept that where you're going to cast these nets, and in today's world, where you decide to place yourself makes more of a difference than the marketing once you get there. You have to have the positioning right. You have to strategically think where you want to be, because otherwise what you run the risk of happening is that you're going to get a logo, you're going to get a website, you're going to be polished, you're going to be rehearsed, you're going to be wonderful, but unfortunately, you're the vegan selling to the butchers or vice versa. And almost nothing you're going to go do is going to go matter. And the biggest specific example, you're thinking, okay, I'm neither a vegan nor a butcher. What does that really mean in my life? What it really means is, overwhelmingly, when I advise companies, they're looking for too small a company they're not looking for their best clients. They're like, oh, I'm really afraid that if I don't cast an incredibly wide net, I might lose someone, rather than saying, where do my best clients and referral sources come from? And a lot of what this presentation about is to try to get you to think about and urge you to kind of experiment with, when you're really focusing on your best clients and referral sources, what would you need to say? What would you need to do beyond an elevator speech to make that process run more smoothly, to increase the chances that you actually meet your best potential clients and referral sources? So the reason for that is we all need to land new clients. That's why we're all here. That's it's a relationship world. It's a relationship business. And you've heard me use the phrase referral source a couple of times, and I'm going to define it in the next slide, not because you don't know what a referral source is because I'm using it in a very specific way that is tied to some of what I hope you think about and try to apply during the breakout room. So what is a referral source? You all know, you don't need to bring an outside speaker to tell you what a referral source is, but I hope you think about a referral source a little bit differently. And here's what, for the purposes, at least for tonight, let's play a game, work with me. Let's use this definition of a referral source. It's your best clients before you do. So imagine running a movie and you're thinking, oh, here's the projects, here's the matters, here's the clients. And you're thinking, if I ran the movie in reverse, how did that come to me? How did that come to my plate? How was it referred to me? And you will see that's not a random pattern. It could be that financial advisors get work from a CPA or vice versa. But there's an actual pattern that if you look at not all of your clients, but if you look at your best clients, the cases, the matters, the situations that you would like to replicate, if you could, you're thinking about those people. And the question is, what would you tell those people? What would you say to them beyond that would be beyond just an elevator speech? And here's the thing that most people do. Most people, and I'll show you some examples, are thinking of casting a net, not to their best clients or best referral sources. Too often the mistake that you make, or that we make, because I'm in this world too, in the B2B world, when you're looking at executives and advisors and people who are credentialed and sophisticated, is that we give people too basic a definition. We give them a job description of, and that's the world of consumer advertising. That's the, let me explain to you what the benefits of our car wash are, or our app is, because you tell people, like, here's what it is, because most people don't know. But if you think about, just think back on the last year and a half or two, your best clients, was the referral source for that someone unsophisticated who knew nothing about your world, or was that someone who probably knew something about your world? That's what this is all about. So before we get into, like, so here's something to think about, just to kind of jog your memory, to get you to loosen up a little bit, to experiment, as I said. So what do you have to convey? Before we get to what do you say or not say, what do you convey? What are the traits that matter when you're trying to talk to a world of insiders, not the, well, you know, here's a flat screen TV and here are its features, like a basic job description. What do you need to convey? And there's a specific problem, there's a specific dynamic in this B2B world when you're talking to business owners and their advisors that doesn't exist elsewhere. And that is, people have to agree for the most part to sign up with you before they see the tangible results, right? And in some examples, it's a very long time. So Mary helps people find jobs. When they hire her, they'll find out in hopefully a few weeks and months that, yeah, she was terrific. She gave me great career strategy. Your speaker, Dan, in a couple of months, he talks about sales and network and sales and marketing, right? When people sign up with him and his company, they're doing that in advance of seeing sales results. That's the quintessential dynamic that we have. So in that world, if you want to get beyond just a job description, and you're thinking everything about what do I wear, how do I talk, what's my energy level, here's what ends up mattering. And it matters, it doesn't matter, I've noticed, whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, business valuation, CPA, IT. I imagine if we went around everyone in this space, people would say power and trust is what you're trying to convey. Power, if you don't like the word, I'm comfortable with it. It's effectiveness. Because I don't know the results yet, I'm trusting you that you can solve a problem for me, and you're going to convey power and effectiveness. So one way to think about what you talk about in the situation of networking or anything you do is think to yourself, what am I about to do? Does it convey power and trust to my best clients and referral sources? I could stop right there. We could literally take the next 20 minutes, jot idea, just brainstorm. What in your world conveys power and trust, because it's different in different aspects of business. Let me give you a weird example. I was once advising an import-export company that their clientele was predominantly from China and to a lesser extent Korea. And so one of the things that these were people who lived and who had come to this country from that country, those countries. And one of the things that they realized is that if you come from that culture or those cultures, one of the ways you can tell that someone's important is that you wait for them. When you go to their office, you wait for them. And so this person ran a professional services company, and one of the things they did on purpose was, if you signed up for a 10:30 interview, or 10:30 meeting, they'd make you wait till 11:30 as a matter of policy, because that's how in that world they convey trust and power, or mostly power. Now, am I suggesting, because I don't want Bill to get complaints, you brought in a speaker who told me that I should keep everyone waiting? No, that's not what I'm saying whatsoever. What I'm saying is, think about the world you're in. What does power and trust look like? There's probably a fair amount of overlap in the people in the screen around the room, but it may not be identical. But that's just a good general way. Let's get a lot more specific. Let's dig deep. Okay, so one of the things you're thinking about is, what would you say, how would you act, what would you convey beyond just defining a job description to the clients you most want to attract? What problems do you most want to solve? That's one way you'll see to get to this, because you can say, I'm a business valuation person, but boy, there's a particular kind of problem, a kind of scenario. And I'm going to recommend that one of the ways that you go beyond the job description, here's what do I do, is to begin to think about what problems do I really enjoy solving the most. And another sort of angle to it is, where do I have a competitive advantage? When you start talking about these kinds of things, then that's how you not only do you differentiate yourself, but you also start conveying power and trust. It makes people more memorable. And again, it's not like you have to magically say something during a networking event and everything magically changes. It's a catalyst. It's one step at a time of building a network, getting people to remember you for things. It speeds up the process when you can go beyond the basics. And that's what, after all, what this presentation is all about. None of you really need the basics. We're all talking about intermediate, advanced intermediate, advanced stuff. So with that, let's talk about, okay, that's the theory. That's the, that's the 20,000, 10,000 foot view. Okay, let's actually talk about what's actual messaging actually look like. And I'm going to use some real life examples from a business broker. And I changed the words a little bit, but this is from either a LinkedIn profile or a website. I kind of changed the words a little bit, and it says, and this is good. I wouldn't choose something to pick on someone. It might be someone here, maybe someone who's not here, but someone who's representative of this B2B world of talking to businesses and business owners. And this is a statement: I'll package your business information to maximize. You can read as well as I can. I'll get you information from potential buyers. I'll be a strong negotiating advocate for your team from the beginning all the way through closing. Not bad at all. I wouldn't pick on someone if but is it inspiring? No. And what's the hole in here? Does it convey trust or power? Not so much. Here's why. Can you imagine another business broker who wouldn't say about, if not exactly, the same thing? And one way to test is look at your own marketing copy, look at your websites, look at your LinkedIn, and then say, and take out your name or the name of your entity and say John Smith or Mary, whatever it is, and say, would it read exactly the same? That's a sign that you're doing great. Look, you probably, for some people, want to tell them what a business broker does. But if you believe the premise that your best clients and referral sources are more likely to be people who already know something about your world, this isn't adding that much. Now, this belongs somewhere. Obviously, you want to go tell people what you do. But my basic observation in dealing with really sophisticated business consumers and advising people is, this is good. This is still way better than 80% of what you see out there. This is solid, not bad at all. But if you want to get to the next level, go beyond just describing what you do. So, and this applies to, you can almost guess who this is about. This is one of the two gentlemen who was kind enough to invite me today. And you're thinking, really, Gideon? So the way you thank Michael Goddard is that I wouldn't choose this if this wasn't good, if this wasn't solid. Again, I'm paraphrasing content that I found of him online. Firm manages over $10 billion in assets. Is that good? Yes, right? Because if it was me and some person in the basement of an apartment in Pacoima have $50 between us, you're probably not sending them your 401k plan, right, to manage. So it's relevant. Is it impressive? It's good. It's terrific. we're focused on helping fiduciaries. I love it. Here's why. Because if you don't know what the word fiduciary means, you're probably not a great referral source for him. What I like about this is not just the basics. Now, it still has an element of job description. We consult on custom plan design, quality investment lineup. It's still some element of what we do, which I like. But your best referral sources and clients probably know this stuff already. So I love the fact this is really, really good, way above average. I like it a lot, but it still has that component of you need this. And my suggestion is you can also get beyond this. And that's what this presentation is about. So this is a good way to pause. Let me make sure what Mike Godard's face looks like. He seems still fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, so here's my basic observation. Be more than if you want to work at this level, business executives, business advisors, for the gentleman, congratulations, who is starting a new, as a franchise, business coach. So you want to use your expertise to help people in the business world. Nothing is a better calling than that. So congratulations, wonderful. This applies to you as well. Be more than, like, the job description part is fine, but convey, the power and trust part is be an expert. You have expertise. It comes from book learning, academia, for a lot of people, a variety of jobs and real life experience and ongoing education. And it's not that you have to recite all of that, although certifications and stuff like that can be helpful. But part of it is you want to share your expertise to insiders in a non-basic kind of way. So let me just pause here. I see that there are a couple of messages in the chat, and which give me a second here. And I want to give people, let's before we, because we have some time before I want some Q&A, and let me give you one other thought before we do some breaks for Q&A, because I want this interactive, about what are the elements of what works. And in today's world, one of the things that works is responsiveness. There's no person on this call who's looking at the screen who says, well, if I take a week and a half to respond to an email from a potential client, it doesn't matter, right? It matters for all of us. My only observation is there's a limit to it in today's world. And here's the limit. And this goes to, not only is there, you have to tell people what you do, but job descriptions are not enough. Responsiveness has a certain limit to it, right? And here's the limit. So I was looking for a recent event, and a recent event that might be applicable to some of you professionally or otherwise you're interested in it, is that on March 26th, so not very long ago, a certain tax bill was proposed by Senator Sanders about changing the income taxes and corporate taxes and estate planning taxes, called the 99.5%. So not like top of the news. It's not competing with Beyonce on Twitter. This is not like, and you're thinking, I use this example because it's recent and it's somewhat obscure. And you're thinking, how many people could have written about this in the days following the introduction of this bill in the Senate? So remember, this took place March 26th. So I did a Google search on, you can tell the screenshot. On the bottom right, I took this screenshot April the 5th, so almost exactly 2 weeks later, and only 13,600 articles already exist about the basic provisions of this potential bill to change the tax law. Why do I mention this to you? Here's why. Part of, if you're going to go beyond your elevator speech and your communication, is in today's world, it's good to tell people here's the current situation. And obviously we are living in a world of tax law changes and business changes and tons of dynamic issues, for everybody in this room, right? Some aspect of the pandemic and business changes and regulatory changes and supply and demand and all sorts of differences, right? Yes, it's good to summarize, here's what the current situation is, but you can get that information at different levels of reliability from a ton of reliable places, accounting firms, law firms, bloggers, people like you. So if you're only telling me what the current situation is, like yesterday, Congress passed this law, yesterday, this happened, yesterday, here's what happened in the employment report, realize that you're in today's world, that's sufficient. It's good. It's good as part of your messaging of how you show you're an expert is to stay on top of details. But if you don't share strategy, that's what experts do. In a world where your inbox is flooded and you're trying to be memorable and you want to go beyond, here's what happened yesterday, here's the basics of, let me just tell you of the elements of a 401k, for example, or the elements, the 3 biggest mistakes that people make in how they get hacked is way more memorable. Why? Because what experts do is we use our expertise, we use our judgment, our education, and we tell people, here's what matters more, here's what matters less. Pay attention to this. And when people are flooded with information, that's one of the ways that you go beyond your elevator speech. Tell strategy, use your expertise to tell people, here's not only what's going on, but here's what I think you really should focus on. Because if you're trying to compete with, I'm just going to summarize, I'm just going to tell people, I'm going to post something on LinkedIn, you are literally competing with tens of thousands of people who are doing just that. It's not a bad thing to do, but there's a limit to trying that strategy. So what does work? And I've kind of hinted at it. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of what I hope we're going to go use in the in the breakout, which is what works. When you're really looking for the best potential client, the best potential referral source, what you have is solid. You're trying to kind of do something that's more expert-like. You want to engage in trust and power. It's this. This is one of the things that I want to see if I suggest we try. Here's why. I have solved problems for people just like you or people you look up to. Think about your world. Your clients have a hierarchy in their head. Bigger companies, more famous companies, celebrities, a more sophisticated problem. And so when you tell people not the basic stuff that you do, like, and I'll give you an example from lawyers, but not very many. Like, you don't need to hear from a lawyer who says, you know what, you really should die without, it's really bad to die without a will. Like, great, who didn't know that by now? Everyone knows that by now. But if you say to people, the way you convey trust and power in a very educational, natural way is when you talk about, I have solved problems for companies like you, for bigger than you, issues more novel than you. Now, you don't say to them, well, you know, I talked to someone who was their problem was even harder than yours. You just select that as what you talk about. That's part of what you're trying to convey. I have solved problems for people like you, organizations like you. And the reason is that conveys trust and power. And if you tap into this hierarchy that people have in their head, and so part of it is people have different hierarchies. So you have to listen to them. You have to do work. You have to research them. You have to do due diligence on them, as they say in my field, about trying to listen to them and understand what for them is trust and power. But let me give you an example from like testimonials. When people give testimonials, what's the most important part of a testimonial? If it's a business testimonial, most people think it's I worked with Bill Gage and he was very helpful to me and my team. Great, fabulous, I love it. The most important part, and when you're talking to business owners in this world of you being an expert, it's the company and mostly the job title of the person who's providing you the testimonial, right? Because if they say, I'm the CEO of something, or in the example I started with, I'm a wealth advisor, and and someone said, Mary helped me manage, grow my thing, if she talks about who that person is, because the name by itself usually isn't sufficient. That's what being a celebrity means. A celebrity means that just their name is enough to convey something. But for most of us, we need to go the step beyond and say, I have solved problems for people, organizations. We need to show this. We don't have to say it, we have to show this. So this is one strategy that I highly recommend. Here are 5 more examples. And some of you are thinking, I don't know any of these. And that's kind of the point. All of them, here's the other strategy. And trust me, I will, before we go to the next slide, I'll walk you through all of these. Don't share your expertise around basic problems. Give me high-level problems, unusual problems, sophisticated problems. And the reason is that when you're dealing with sophisticated people in your world, especially referral sources, they correctly assume that if you can handle sophisticated stuff in your expertise, you can handle more basic stuff. So let me give you examples. So the first one happens to be from a lawyer, the other ones do not. What's a move away order? I hope none of you ever find this out in your personal life, because this is in the world of divorce. If you're a divorce lawyer, a move away order is an example where one of the parents wants to take a child under the age of 18 and take them out of the jurisdiction. They want to take them out of state to live with them on a permanent basis. So many lawyers, and you've all seen it. You've seen TV commercials. I'm a family law attorney. I do divorces. I do child custody. They just tell you the basics of what they do. But if they talked about, hey, I deal with move away orders, if you were in that world, you're like, oh, if they know how to deal with that very contested, very emotional, very difficult, very lucrative, specific situation, and they're good at it, they're probably good at other more basic stuff. For for people who are in the state planning world, tax world, what is Section 1202? Rather than tell people, it's, like, make sure you don't die. We're trying to get you to make sure you don't run out of money before you die, which is a message that Dave Ramsey and others have repeated ad nauseum forever. Section 1202 in this B2B world Section 1202 is a provision of the Internal Revenue Code that allows the owners of startups that are worth less than $50 million to sell their stock in a way without paying capital gains tax. And you're thinking, wow, if they know about that, if they write about that, if they share their expertise about that, people will correctly assume that they know more simple stuff. Remember, this is for your best clients and referral. International work can be, again, a level of sophistication, something to consider. If you're in the insurance world, a lot of people talk about life and they go term, policy, and everybody, okay, even someone who's not an expert, and I'm so not an expert in insurance, right? Here are examples. It's obviously, this is just a catalyst, but if you talked about key person insurance or premium finance as a way to educate these referral sources, that's a strategy. For those of us who deal with family-owned businesses, and that's part of our market, explaining it was a complex family. They had real estate holdings. Some of them were out of state, some of them out of the country. When you talk about the complex and the high-level problems you solve, these are 5 specific examples of, again, none of them exactly apply to you. I'm not suggesting that anybody all of a sudden become an expert on Section 1202 of the IRS code, although I had to write a whole webinar for it on behalf of a client. It is actually super interesting what he does. So, but it's this technique so of how do you get beyond when you're trying to get to sophisticated people. So the first one, let me go a slide up, is I have problems for you. I solve problems for people that you look up to. The next one is this one, share high-level problems. Share your expertise. Go beyond just the basics of what you do when you describe yourself, especially when it's not the first time someone has seen you. They're like, oh, I know what you do. You do X. a way to further the conversation is get into some of these higher level problems you solve. And let's talk about the third one of my favorites, origin story. So an origin story, as you might imagine, it's a little bit what it sounds like, is something that taps into not what you do, but why you do what you do. And specifically, how did you get into doing this? Of all the things that you could have done, all of us have options. Even the people on this call who claim that at age 4, they were forced into selling tax and audit services and it's their life dream. Even those people have an origin story. They're like, why did I choose to do this? And the reason is that people think and feel their way through retaining business related services, right? Because it's that trust and power. And a lot of times, if I don't understand the sophistication of what you do, I don't know the details. I'm not a mathematical person. You are all whizzes at, Excel and math and spreadsheets. Sometimes I can relate better to the why you do what you do. And that's, like, by the way, a great job hunting tip. Like, sometimes, especially when you're trying to switch careers, and I have in my career, and people do that all the time, the way that you convey, you can't say I've done exactly what I'm about to apply for, but you can convey the why of how in a way that conveys I'm likely to be good at it. Let me give you an example. And I think at least one of the people in the room, or a couple of people in the room, know who I'm going to refer to. So know someone in the Los Angeles area who's an SBA banker, Small Business Administration banker. And I'm going to tell you the following story about her, which I have shared, and she knows I shared the story from time to time about her. She became an SBA banker because when she was 9 years old, her business, her family's business, which was like a corner grocery store kind of business, a retail store, was destroyed, and an SBA loan put her family back on its feet. And that happened to her when she was 9 or 10. So knowing nothing else about her, don't you think, wow, that tells me the why she's a SBA banker? And I'm not saying everyone has as compelling a story. And it doesn't mean that an origin story by itself is everything else. She also happens to have 15 and 20 years of experience. She's awesome at what she does. She's really responsive. But the origin story is something that too many of us shy away from. And we fall into the, here's what I do, and here's what I do on a basic level. And I'm worried about that person who's never heard about what a 401k is and doesn't know what the word fiduciary means, as opposed to saying, you know what, let me also make sure that I reach my best referral sources, my best potential clients. And one way to tap into it is to tell them your origin story. How did you get into this line of work? And if you're thinking, how do I do that? Now, sometimes it's literally just chronological, and it's great for networking. It's great for, we will get back to doing things exotic, like face-to-face meals. It's great as they get to judge you, to know you, when they know not only what you do, but how you got into it and why it matters to you and why you're doing this. That's one of the 3 key ways I solve problems for organizations that you look up to, sophisticated problems, not basic stuff. That's one message that I think works, and I just have evidence it works. The other one is I solve high-level problems. Your third one, origin stories.